first thank everyone for being here. We're excited about the panel today. We've got a great group of speakers. And we have really, I think, an interesting conversation that's going to take place today. And I wanted to make sure that everybody on the call or on the web is aware that they will have the opportunity to ask questions. So we're going to go through a short series of kind of facilitated Q&A to get the conversation going. So be thinking as we're going along of questions you might want to ask. Like I said, we have a great group of panelists, so I think we'll all learn a lot today. I also wanted to remind everyone that we are recording the session today. I will cut off all the stuff at the beginning where I was talking about my dog, so that will be gone. And it'll just start with the formal panel part. So we will be sharing this via our STEM Hub YouTube channel so that all of our rural teachers are able to access it, because a lot of them have trouble doing the live Zooms. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Dr. Alistair Windsor, who is going to get the conversation going and introduce our panelists. And I will be monitoring the chat as we go along. So if you have questions, go ahead and type them in as we go, and I'll read those out once we get to that part of the discussion. So there's Alistair. I was going to say, so, all right. So Alistair, the floor is yours.
Yes, the floor was really my daughter's, but so I'm going to turn it straight over to Hal Evans. Can you give everyone, all of our speakers at least, permission to share their screens? Because I believe Hal has some PowerPoints he wants to share.
They
should. No PowerPoints. I decided not to make people suffer that way.
Okay.
So I'll just talk about it. So I'm a software developer at FedEx. I've been working there for the last 15 or so years. I spent 13 years of that working on the airline side of the house. And what I did was I took poorly written requirements that were a pilot legal contract and turned that into functional software. So anything about not violating an FAA regulation or international regulation, I had to take that and figure out how to make sure we weren't violating those, as well as calculating things like pay for pilots. So a lot of that really kind of revolved around reading between the lines and having odd questions with lawyers, such as, if this is true, please just keep breathing. So after doing that for a number of years, I was feeling a touch stagnant. So I decided to make a slight change. I'm still writing software, but I also work on a team now where we help other developers at FedEx modernize their applications for a more cloud native environment. So we're working with a lot of the big vendors in the world who do cloud computing, except for one out of Seattle for various reasons. And I also write an application that allows people to manage their applications. So I kind of split my time between two different jobs. My education background is a little odd in the sense that I have a very non-traditional degree. I have a classics degree and was very focused on Roman art and architecture and literature. But I took a bunch of computer science, probably enough to get a math minor and a computer science major. And when I finally graduated college, my parents were very excited to stop footing that bill. And so after that, I did what all good kids do. I moved into my parents' basement and spent hours on the internet looking for a job, which brought me back to Memphis unexpectedly and working at FedEx. I'm a product of Shelby County Schools. I went to Mount Pisgah and Houston High School. Yeah, so that is what I do on the day-to-day. Also, please forgive me if you hear dogs lose their mind. They're desperately trying to protect us from squirrels.
Thank you very much, Hal. So let's move on to Jim Fitzhenry, and we'll do all of our questions at the end. So Jim.
Okay, great. So I've been with Buckman for 32 years, and the first 10 years were spent on the commercial side of the business, where I was embedded in our customer sites, troubleshooting massive paper and packaging and tissue machines and trying to find solutions on how to improve productivity with or without a chemical solution from Buckman. Buckman is a specialty chemical company from a biotech and a chemical perspective. that helps make the paper stronger, make the water cleaner, make the leather softer type thing. And on the commercial side, I was also involved in product management and creating the product line when I moved into the corporate office and then back into sales management. On the product line side of things, I was working with research to create the product, commercialize it, and bring it to the customer. And then sales management is self-explanatory. That was the first 10 years. I learned a lot on the commercial side of the business. And then I moved on to the innovation side, which is really my passion. And I spent the first, say, 10 to 15 years on the innovation side, working with the Memphis chemical innovation team. And then that expanded into the Memphis chemical and biochemical innovation team, where we're creating solutions which are incremental or world-changing, patentable solutions for the customers, still very much connected to the customer while doing so. And that expanded into running our global R&D organization with facilities in China, in Latin America, and South Africa, Europe, et cetera. And then I learned a lot as we gained a new CEO in terms of digital transformation. The last 5 years, we've been on a Buckman 4.0 journey and transitioning a 75-year-old chemical company into a digital company and interface with our customers. And then the very latest position I have is on the sourcing side and technology sourcing and finding new technologies that'll help grow our business from outside of our company, combining them with what we're creating internally, as well as sorting through how to manage our strategic suppliers and make sure we're innovating with them in a partnership perspective, and then also managing some M&A activity as that progresses. So I'm from Buffalo, New York originally, but I've been in Memphis for 28 years now, out of the 32 with Buckman, and love Memphis. Very similar to Buffalo. It's in terms of we never think we're as good as we are, and we really the weather's not the same, of course, but everything that little blue collar feel is definitely in both cities. So that's my story. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Jim. And if you have questions as we go, feel free to type them into the chat, and Stephanie will run through those questions at the end for us. So next up for us is Petya Grady.
If I can figure out how to turn on my microphone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Petya Grady. I'm an innovation manager at ServiceMaster. And a lot of the work that I do in a very different context kind of echoes some of what Jim was just talking about. Digitally led, technology-focused innovation for our company. ServiceMaster is a multi-billion-dollar company. We own several brands that you may have heard of. Terminix is the largest one, but there's others like Mary Maids and ServiceMaster Restore, ServiceMaster Clean. I've been with the company for 3 years, and my background is in UX, user experience, and interaction design. I have a funny way my journey of getting into that line of work was very funny to me, interesting in many ways. In some ways, it echoes what Howell was saying. I majored in political science in college. I came to the States when I was 18, all by myself, to study politics and democracy. And I did that in college and even went to graduate school to study political philosophy. But at the time, people started writing blogs. I don't know if you remember those. And I was just really curious about that. My college required some sort of a digital focused class. And for my project, I ended up creating a blog. And from then on, that was the end of my classwork. I just wanted to work on my website and read what other people are writing on the internet and having various arguments about all sorts of things with people all over the world. So when I was faced with the decision of whether to continue on to a PhD program in political science or just get a job in tech, I chose to get a job in tech. And I started off as a project manager for a software development company. And from then on, I just learned on the job. So I have a lot of thoughts on, what a tech education can can look like and where it can happen. For many of us, that experience does not necessarily take place in a classroom. For many of us, our technology careers really start when we get our first job. So happy to share more with you about that. And I've been in Memphis for 10 years. This is our home now, and really excited to share more about my experience with you.
Thank you, Petra. And our last presenter for today will be Kimberly Bailey.
Hello, everyone. I am Kimberly Bailey. I am the Director and Chief Information Officer for the City of Memphis. I have a 25-year history in information technology. I actually started out as a pharmacy major in college and realized that organic chemistry was not my ministry. And I really liked my computer classes at the time. And so I finished up my degree at Christian Brothers University here in Memphis. And I have a bachelor's in management information systems as well as a master's in computer information systems. I've worked for many big companies like General Motors, EDS, but this is like the most connected opportunity for me being here at the City of Memphis. It was actually my first internship out of college. I worked in the Information Technology Division in 1995 as an intern. And it's really a full circle moment. Of course, native Memphian. I went to Central High School and Christian Brothers, and I am here with a fantastic team. This is a great place to do some amazing things, and I'm just really excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. So now Stephanie will be working us through the questions and helping run the question and answer session.
All right, so we'll start off with just a couple that we discussed beforehand. So again, anybody that has other questions, please feel free to add those to the chat. So first, I would like to ask each of you to share a little bit about the importance of tech skills within your organization and really the roles where tech competencies are needed, and how you expect this to change over the next 5 years. So we can go in the same order if you'd like, or.
Sure, that's fine. So FedEx right now is actually in the middle of kind of a very large turnover in tech skill. For a long time, we were very stagnant in changing out our technology stacks. And so we were still running on things that would have been more in vogue in, say, the early 2000s than the 2020s. And so right now, everyone is trying to move forward with that and get new skills. So there's been a big shift to understanding cloud computing and cloud modeling, moving away from distributed systems and things of that nature. But there's also still a lot of core values in project management and how we can integrate better technology into that and streamline process. Because everyone's trying to move, I'm sure everyone hears the term agile all the time, but trying to move away from these very stagnant, slow, drawn-out processes to get things done into a more continuous development and delivery situation. So that's one of the biggest places we're seeing our changes. As far as the rest goes, FedEx is very agnostic as far as like programming languages and things like that goes. We're a very heavy Java shop, but we use all kinds of things. There's lots of space for analytics. There's lots of space for pure development. There's lots of space for theoretical. There are people who are trying to make a robot to deliver packages as well, as I'm sure you've seen the commercial. So it's a very wide array of things that people can work on and do.
Thanks so much. Jim, would you like to respond next?
Sure. So we have a lot of technical needs for chemistry and biochemistry for any of our research programs. That's self-evident. I think that the interesting part about the company is regardless of whether you're in research or not, you need these fundamental life science skills to work as a salesperson with the customer to troubleshoot their machine, to understand strategic marketing and how the offering that you're creating can be brought to the customer site and communicated with the customer. There's an entire group that's formed in the last 4 years around digital, and that includes understanding the user interface that the customer is going to use to experience the combination of digital and chemical technology, the structure, the collection and structure of data itself, and doing that in the way that makes it useful for the company. And then the analytics, as Howell was referencing, that go along with utilizing that data to create insights for the customer. And all that really is wrapped around our chemical or biochemical offering. So you can go down the litany of chemistry courses and biochemistry courses. I know Kimberly wouldn't be happy with my organic chemistry focus, but it's something it's very important for an aspect of our business, not all of it. So most jobs in the company require some understanding of STEM at some level, whether it be engineering, math, life sciences, digital, and it really permeates the company. Even the finance folks have to have a comprehension of how the business works, which means they have to understand some nature of chemistry and biochemistry, even though it's not their forte.
Thank you.
My experience is similar at ServiceMaster and elsewhere. ServiceMaster specifically, our IT function is the second largest corporate function in the company after finance. So it's IT hands touch anything in any stage of our process, from interacting with customers to delivering service to collecting payments. Any and all of the above requires technology support, maintenance, design, and so on and so forth. What's been really interesting for me to observe over the last several years is how it almost feels in many ways that some of our IT secrets are out and people have figured out that we know things and we know how to work in ways that other people want in on. So, working in an agile environment, project managing initiatives, big and small, all of these things are just kind of so core to how we work in technology and STEM, and we take it for granted, but it's not to be taken for granted. Other functions are not as familiar with these processes or not as fluent and efficient in them. So that's where I've seen a lot of career growth for people getting pulled out of IT into wider business roles, just because they can lead a bigger initiative. They can take a really big kind of hairy problem, like break it down in an understandable way, collect a team around it, manage roles that are very different functionally. So that has been really fun to see. And the other aspect of our world that I think it should have been obvious all along, but it's even sort of new to us, is that obsession with the user and the customer, and really designing products and services that serve a very particular person. We're not creating anything in isolation. We're not creating anything because it sounds cool or because it sounds interesting to us. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's not solving very specific problems for very specific people in the world. So that has been really fun for me to see.
So for me, from a public sector standpoint, most of us know a lot of our systems have been around for many, many years, and a lot of antiquated processes and just a lot of familiarity with what we do. So this is a great time for us to start looking at efficiency and digitizing some of our applications, going more with the cloud. So there are always opportunities, especially in this type of setting. I'm big on having a project manager for every project, no matter the size, because I like that oversight and being able to control scope and costs and things of that nature. But from those technical skills, like security is always important. I think that is the way we will be going, and always have a presence and always have a need to have some key security staff. Our data center, who monitors our Active Directory, and all of those connections that allow us to be able to quickly access our data is great. We have a very robust networking and telecommunications team, so those areas are also vital for us. GIS, web development are key, and even down to service delivery from a help desk, or if you go to a user and help them to set up their computer. So there's lots of avenues. I think this is just a place where you can find your passion and always, find a place that makes sense for you, even down to finance for us. You have to understand how our contracts work and being able to navigate through those processes. So there's a wide variety in IT, especially in public sector, and I just think it's a great time for us right now.
Thank you. Next, I'd like for everybody to talk a little bit about sort of the new hires that are coming into your organizations, and what are you guys looking for, and what are you not finding? So where are there skill gaps or interest gaps that you're seeing within your organizations around the technical roles?
So new hires is an interesting thing to me as far as the technology field goes, because I'd be curious to know how the others feel, but when I got hired, I didn't really know how to write code. Like, I'd done it for 10 or 15 years of my life, but what that really looks like at industry and scale is radically different. And so one of the biggest things we look for when we bring people in is, are you just generally curious, right? Because I can teach most anyone the nuts and bolts around how do you wire up an application and things like that. It's not, in the grand scheme of things, that hard. What we're really looking for is people who are willing to be pretty independent and motivated and read and research. That's one of the biggest things, is just taking that initiative and going, okay, how can I understand this better for myself, but also being willing to fail fast and ask for help when they need it. And so a big part of it is really communication, the independent working, and yes, you need technical skills, but just being able to think big picture, not being super locked into an individual path that it has to be this way because I've got this hammer, so everything must be a nail, and being willing to pivot rapidly is very crucial for us. The technology skills, while important, are in some ways second. We're really big on hiring our interns, because there's not a lot of great ways to bring people in and kind of test them out, but that is one of them. There are various laws around us doing that with contractors that makes it harder, but if you can get an internship and land in the right team and prove yourself, that's a really great path forward at FedEx specifically.
So building on Howell's comment, what we call what we're looking for in each person is in having a growth mindset, a willingness to learn, not only about the technical and the business itself, but also to be introspective and understand the strengths and weaknesses of each individual and how to develop as a person while developing the career. And typically things that have to be addressed over the course of a career is conflict resolution, an ability to own the mistakes you might make over the course of a career and then move on from them, learn from them, acknowledging and giving others credit. All that is combined in this growth mindset of getting feedback and being able to continue to improve yourself. And then that is linked with, in addition to the technical skill sets, the critical thinking, so you can analyze and problem solve is critical to what we're looking at. Parallel thinking, so you can connect the dots across disciplines. And one of the things I'll say that we have a little bit of trouble with is when I hire a chemistry major, a biochemistry major, they may not have enough digital savvy to cross the offering on the digital side. Same with a digital person, may not have any chemistry or biochemistry savvy and not be able to cross that bridge. So ability to learn and gain new information. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to be able to speak the language. It's a challenging thing to find for us. And then I would say the other piece is a collaborative spirit. You have to be able to work across cultures, work across different types of people from different walks of life, and want to collaborate and get energized by collaborating with folks.
These are all such great comments. I sign under all of it. I think that ultimately, when people look to hire, they're looking to hire the person who's going to sit at the desk next to them. Well, maybe not anymore, I don't know. But, ultimately we're trying to find a person that we want to work with. So I think a lot of times, especially in STEM, we are just so skills focused that we tend to forget that ultimately it's all these other skills that will help you get the job. All that being said, I will also say that it's a little bit, I think that in many ways, larger corporations such as ServiceMaster, such as FedEx, in some ways are a little bit unfair and difficult for for people who are just starting out. And I know that in principle, we subscribe to all of these things that Jim and Howell just described, but in reality, I think sometimes we come in conflict with our own recruitment process that is very much becoming like so, just driven by algorithms and, recruiters in our HR departments that know nothing about technology or, just running all these like searches on LinkedIn and like other similar databases. So in that creates, for me at least, that creates a certain level of unfairness in the hiring process, especially of more junior people, because if you've just finished college or you're still in college, chances are that you don't have a whole lot of experience that you can share on your LinkedIn, but in a conversation you'd be able to talk about your work ethic, your mindset, your curiosity, and like things that you have tried that are absolutely relevant, and they just never have a chance to come up. So this is more probably just like a note to self to think about that as we look for new employees. And something to just kind of, as a thought, certification and education, I think overall the industry has sort of accepted as they're not good indicators of how good of a developer you're going to be, how good of a whatever you're going to be in the workplace. But I think that for people who are just learning, I think there is value in pursuing some certifications just so you can kind of game some of those search algorithms and make it easier for people to open and 150% yes on internships. Like that's the way
So I think what everyone has said has been really key for us in our when we look to hire our new employees. I also think multitasking is a really good skill set to have. We don't have the luxury of having a really, really large team in some corporations. With public sector, you're small, and so you have to do a lot with less. So we're a team with a little over 80 people that supports the entire city of Memphis. And when you think about that, that's every police station, fire station, every city asset, and employees. But the key is if you get good people in those roles, then, it doesn't feel all the time as much as it is. And they may disagree, those of them that are listening. It probably feels like a lot because I always ask for more. But they do a fantastic job because we try to get individuals that can multitask. You may start out with what you think your day is going to be like, and it will change multiple times. And it may not end at 5 o'clock. It will go on. It may not start at 8 or 9. It could span through the weekend. So you have to be able to pivot and shift. And now, since we're in this remote work environment, I think a lot of self-discipline comes in place, making sure you're accessible, making sure you're responsive. And all of this in addition to your, of course, technical skills. Professional development, where do you think you need to improve? That's one of our core values here. And we also, want you to think about where you can extend your knowledge and how you can improve yourself. And, ultimately being a team player, we have tried to do a lot of engaging things in this remote situation. We've done weekly coffee calls. We've done all types of things to keep everyone engaged. And so, making sure that you're visible, you're present, and creating a space that if someone is having challenges, that, they can, have a safe space to discuss those. So I think it's, the tech skills are wonderful. We need those. But there's some interpersonal and some other things that also make you a whole person in this industry.
All right, so we're going to pause with the questions that I sent to you guys in advance and move over to some of the things that are coming in the chat. We have a great one here from Alistair, who has also been dealing with a cat fight, literally, like cats fighting, blood happening in the midst of your all's discussion as well. So if you saw him disappearing, that was why. But we have a really, I think, important question around image. So what image do you think the public has of a tech worker, and what effect do you think this has on students who are considering these careers?
I think that has evolved so much throughout the years, right? Like I started writing software when I was 14 or so years old. Like I never really considered anything else. I don't, like if you told me today I had to go get another job, I don't know what that would be. I don't have that bag. But now I think it's been more normalized. And then we had that weird period in the late 90s, mid 90s where it was really in vogue and people saw Silicon Valley. And now that's even being lampooned in shows like Silicon Valley. So the image of a tech worker is kind of all over the place, right? Like it's there's parts of it that are very stereotypical true, right? Like I have asthma. I like comic books, but I also am super into road cycling and bowling, right? So it's becoming more and more of a mixed bag of what it looks like to be a tech worker, where you see just people kind of doing all kinds of different and unique things amongst themselves. So I'm not sure if it's the same old image of the guy wearing glasses with tape on them or not anymore. It's at one point they seem super cool, but at the same time they can also seem sometimes really out there, like an Elon Musk, who at times probably needs his Twitter account taken away from him. So it's kind of all over the map. I don't know if we have a coherent view of what living in tech and working in tech looks like anymore.
So I'll answer in a little bit different manner from the perspective of when I talk with students who are in high school and they're in these life science degrees or technical degrees. 90% of them or 95% of them are considering medical school or veterinary school. And the industrial tech worker is not even something on their radar and is likely misunderstood. And there's a few that want to go right into getting a job and being very utilitarian about their careers. But in general terms, industrial social impact innovation is undersold and not well marketed, I think, in terms of what a possible career could be for those high school students and even early college. I think it comes alive in college when folks aren't able to go to medical school or change their mind on that and suddenly find themselves having to do something else with these types of degrees. And that's great. It would be nice if they came in excited about having this career as a tech worker in industry and understanding that impact and how it can really change the world. If you think 85% of the world's water is used by industry, what an impact you could have by using that more efficiently and creating more useful world scenarios for places that are water starved. I mean, that's an inspiring piece. I don't know how many high school students are talking about that. Not a criticism, just what I'm observing. So how do we create that? I think that's a lacking a view or image of a tech worker if I'm talking about it from a social impact innovation perspective in industry.
And I'm not sure, Petra may have moved somewhere to get away from the noise.
The construction.
So, yeah. Well, let's move to you.
Okay. So a tech worker, this question kind of made me think about when I was a network analyst working for the Memphis Grizzlies. It was when I moved back to Memphis from Atlanta. It was in 2003. And I think what it looked like at that time was I was the girl with the cart with computers and keyboards, and I came and I set up the computers, or the person that they called to when they couldn't print and things of that nature. And I think it's always a functional view. When you have a video game, you're working in it, some tech is behind that, but you don't really see the back end. I think forums like this and those of us who have the opportunity are able to spotlight the behind the scenes careers that help those things come together. You may not see my network security and data people, but they have a key role in what functionally happens when you press the power key. You may get an implementation that happens, a new product that you may or may not like, but there's a whole project management team that's behind the scenes that's making sure it seamlessly gets implemented. So I think we have to highlight ourselves and highlight our employees and highlight those who really seem more behind the scenes. Because if you don't understand that, you only have a real functional view of your connection with the technology. You press power, Windows comes on, you do your email, but there's so much behind the scenes to make that all work for you. And it's some very exciting careers that help that come to together in one space for you. And so I think we just have to make it more appetizing and make, individuals see that there are just some amazing things that people can do outside of what you see on a normal basis every day as a functional user.
I'm back.
Are you back?
Yeah, I think I am. Let's see for how long, but I think I'm just going to kind of take my response in a slightly different direction. As somebody who, was not trained, my experience, I guess, let me back up. Somebody who didn't get a STEM education, I don't have an engineering degree, a computer science degree. I feel like for me, I was a little bit surprised when I got my first job in tech about how very few women there were in the company. And also I was very kind of shocked at the strict delineation between what jobs were given to men and which jobs were given to women. That was in Bulgaria. When I moved to the States, you see so much of that. And then on top, you see another layer of lack of diversity, which is the lack of racial diversity. You go into any IT department, that is just so obvious. Like you walk into any IT department in Memphis and you're like, where's everybody? So I think that, representation matters so much. And there are so many stereotypes about who works in IT, who does what within IT, which jobs matter more than others. I mean, we don't like it, but there are hierarchies even within technical jobs. Which type of development work is more difficult and which one is easy, and who happens to do the difficult and who happens to do the easy. I think there's just so much exciting work that's being done by all sorts of people in all sorts of different ways, including this group, about demystifying these careers so that everybody can feel welcome and everybody can know that they can do them and they can enjoy them. But there's just so much more that we should be doing. I could just go on forever on that. I think that for me personally, early on in my career, I felt intimidated, and the lack of diversity and what I perceive is my inexperience really kind of made me hold back. It took some time, but then I realized that ultimately the fact that I was different is really just kind of gives me without really trying, I have a leg up because I bring in physically my different being brings in a different perspective into the conversation that is just so needed and so valuable. There's so many examples of how the lack of diversity on technology teams has led to crap product, just things not working properly, entire sets of use cases just being completely ignored simply because it was 5 dudes in a room that were building the application. So there's just so much beauty and innovation that is being missed out on because of those lingering stereotypes. But there's just so much that's also being done now to change that. So I'm personally very excited about this particular subject.
Thank you very much. That was a great response. So now we have a question from Regina Whitley, and she may actually want to provide a little bit more context to everybody. So I'm going to ask Regina if she'll just unmute and ask her question verbally.
Am I unmuted? Okay, very good. I had the opportunity, we, the Greater Memphis IT Council, and Stephanie, Dr. Ivy serves on the board. We were able to hear from the Greater Memphis Chamber on 2 occasions, our full membership, but also to the board of directors. But there is an excellent study, and some of you may be aware, that was conducted as part of the Upskill 901 conference that was held last October. And it really looks at Memphis core industries, which I think the representation here today are part of that. And what are the digital skills required for the 21st century economy? So it talks about specifically, as I heard in the discussion, Agile, the importance and how it changes and increases over the next, quarter, or I don't know the span of time, but Python being today of interest and being used, but really moving. So it would be, I think, helpful to the full panel, but also to the teachers and educators to look at that. And Stephanie has a copy. I just think the more it's out there, the more we can use it and the more competitive we would be as a city and as organizations and as individuals, because it really helps, gives you kind of a career path you should be considering or skill development.
Thanks, Regina. And I'll be glad to share that out to everybody after the meeting.
Okay, great.
Just a quick comment around skills. So especially in the context of like K through 12 education, I think that the conversation around skills is just so important, mostly so that you can inform. Basically, you need to know what to teach, right? But at the same time, I think that the skills conversation sometimes benefits people who are already kind of on that path. If I'm a kid that goes to private school and my parents have been like sending me to all sorts of enrichment classes all along, I know a little bit of mobile development, I know a little bit of web. It's useful to me to hear that the next thing you need to learn is Java. But if I'm somebody who doesn't even know what web development is, or doesn't even know that a human being just like me makes mobile apps, talking to them about programming languages is not the most exciting thing. So for the educators, my personal experience has been that once you start talking to kids about problems that they're interested in solving or industries that they may be excited about, then the skills, all of that kind of lines up. But if you have passion about doing something for other people and making something for your friends, or something along those lines, those are the kinds of conversations that really drive or pull people in. And that will include girls who typically don't see themselves in these technology conversations around skills, or just kids that just don't have as much exposure to skills or languages. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to build on what Petra's saying there as well. Because saying the skills is tricky because the skills and the things we're looking for change so rapidly in the technology field. And I would never want to say learn this or learn that, because in 4 years we may never care about that thing again. But one of the things that I do find is the most interesting, and what I think makes for people really good in the technology field, is their ability to get in there and understand how a process works, right? Because all any technology really is doing is taking a process and automating that. And so how good are you at looking at a process or how something flows and breaking that down into its component parts and just really understanding that and then turning that into something useful for other people? That's the biggest skill, is the ability to just look at things and try and breathe them in and understand them, is what I look for most in people.
If I can chime in, my mother is a retired teacher. She taught for 32 years, so I absolutely love educators, and I think you all are amazing. And I think what is key is making sure there is a space for independent thought and thinking. When we talk about diversity, it's not just in presence, it's also diversity in thought. You could have a table that may not necessarily represent what we would like to see, but if they are thinkers outside of the box and everyone can bring something different to the scope of the project or the issue, then you can advance and you can move forward. So I think that if you have time in your classrooms where, someone has that independent, way of sharing, and no one is criticized for their opinion or the way they see something, and you make it a safe space, you start grooming people who are able to sit at these tables and have confidence in saying, okay, this is what I think, this is how I see it. And, you can build that, because that's something that starts at a very young age, that confidence, that esteem, to be able to, have that awareness to, say, I have an opinion, and this is what, I think we could do to move this along. So I think that's where you could help us as we look at our future successors and our future employees, having that independent, mindset and being able to bring creative thought and critical thinking to the table. It can start, in your hands as educators.
I'm going to build on Kimberly's comment, because she got me thinking about some of the most valuable people in our organization on the innovation side are independent, strong-minded thinkers who have their own ideas, very bright people. The challenge that I think can happen earlier in life is, while they are very smart, they may think they're smarter than everybody else and then want only their idea considered and want to move forward with that idea. So it's really important to try and balance that strong-minded brilliance with a collaborative spirit, an understanding of who are the people we're talking to in the room. And I'll say this, obviously I'm not a woman, but I will say we have to understand how it's harder for a woman in that same room, and maybe others, to have that same conversation and be heard, and making that accommodation to let that happen in the room so that everybody's idea is heard and it is a safe space. It's hard to be safe when you have a lot of smart people with very strong opinions who doesn't want to, put themselves out there, or isn't confident enough yet, early in careers especially, to put themselves out there. So it's a complicated moment for educators to try and embrace beyond just the bright technical, digital, whatever skills coming. It's that collaborative spirit, willingness to understand each other, know who you're speaking with, and understand the position someone else is in the room, and making sure they are heard, not just once, but actually considered and made part of the solution. Thanks for the inspiration, Kimberly. You got me thinking.
and I also think, you have to, prepare people that their way may not be the answer, but at least their answer was on the table. And I think that's something that you can allow, even at a school age child. There's a project, and what do you think? And no, we may not go with everyone's way, and there may be a majority way, or there may be someone's way that's better than everybody else's, but you have to have that variation, and you have to make it okay. And they also have to know that, yes, it may not work your way, but that doesn't mean your opinion is not valuable.
All right, so let's see. Oh, that's a comment from Alistair. I was looking to see if we have any other questions. I don't see any other questions, and we're running close to the end of time. So I wanted to ask each of the panelists if they could share some final takeaways, either thoughts about how teachers might be able to inspire students to think about tech careers, or strategies they might be able to use in their classrooms to really bring some of this to life. And you can go in whatever order you want. Whoever would like to start, maybe just wave your arm around.
Okay, I'll go. So I would like for educators not to be afraid of tech themselves. Educate yourselves more about it. learn about some things you're not familiar with. You may have students that know more about something than you do. There's nothing wrong with learning a little bit more so that you can have engagement with your students in that way. But I would just challenge you all to become as tech savvy as you can. I think if you are in this age right now, they're talking about, especially with our school system, handing every student a device to work, and they have the option of either working, doing school from home or coming into the classroom. You're going to have to know how to navigate meetings like this really smooth. You're going to have to know how to keep little ones engaged via a computer screen. I struggle with that sometimes myself. After about 20 meetings a week, it's like I can't listen anymore. But you're going to have to do that. And so those are just mild things that you can do that will help yourself. And I think all of us, I try to study a little bit about everyone's area that works for me so that I can have good conversations with them. Do I do exactly what they all do every day? No. I'm here to help them to make sure they can do it. But I have a responsibility of making sure that I can have a good conversation with them. So, I'll go and read some security articles or some data and networking and PM articles for my own education. So I would challenge you all to do that so that because this is different, and we say the new normal, but it just may be what is normal now. And it's only going to progress. And I would challenge you to make sure that you are ahead and can support the students and make sure that they're prepared. And that would be what I would think for you.
I'll jump in and please know that I'm far from telling you how to do your job at any level at all, because I would be remiss to say that I respect completely what you're doing as educators. So I would offer that what I find works for folks who are coming into the company is using an inspiring story around the problems of the world today, whether it be the use of water, the reuse of water, the struggles that exist in different parts of the world, and whether climate change can be another one. There's a lot of big, hairy issues to put forth in front of students to say, okay, this is a scary situation. Yes, here are some success stories. Here are some ways that mankind has come forth with solutions to make things better. And whether it be in industry or a social impact, another organization, whichever it might be, worker safety, there's a lot of ways of going after it. These students are the future and really can contribute in so many different ways in a STEM curriculum. It's not just a chemist or an engineer. There's a broad spectrum of environmental people, all kinds of answers for all different types of people to be involved, and we need them. We need them to help create these solutions. So I would say try to sprinkle that into your lectures as best you can, your education process.
I'll go next, I suppose. And to piggyback on what Jim said, yes, I would not even begin to fathom to tell people how to teach or what to teach. Right. But I'll use an anecdote from my own life that I think made something click. And I'm going to try to tie this into the question about what math majors need to know about. So I took a lot of math. I took calculus 1, 2, 3, numerical analysis, matrix algebra, intro to abstract math. I took a shocking amount of math on top of the computer science stuff that was math. And I don't really technically use any math ever, right? I add numbers together every so often. I have to use a calculator because I've gotten really dumb when it comes to math. But what I will say is things like the intro to abstract math and the history of math is what I probably use more, because that taught me about how to look at a problem and identify the problem and the history behind the problem. It wasn't until I took in a history of math that, why, Leibniz and Newton, both came at the things from different directions. It's like, oh, okay, this is making sense to me. Water integration and derivation makes sense. So maybe tying more of the human element to the sciences as opposed to just memorize this formula, know the Pythagorean theorem is this, getting away from just, more rote memorization and applying it to why it was being done, because they all were things that were invented for a reason. And I think we can sometimes get away from that. I think can really help people a lot. That's my personal experience.
That's so great. I love that anecdote, and it just, I mean, I really relate to that as well. My analogy is to compare technology education and any kind of STEM skill to language learning, because that's been my experience. The sooner you start, the easier it is. I started learning English when I was in high school, like seriously, but my parents had started me in English classes when I was 6, I think, and they were just so like stupid little lessons, but I was not afraid to try and learn. And I think that technical skills and technical way of thinking is very similar in that same way. The younger you are, even if you're working with very simple problems, even if you're working on very kind of like silly little assignments, anything that you can do for your students to demystify the process so that they know that it's there, it's a thing, it exists, people do, it can be fun. I think that is very beneficial. And the other kind of comment I wanted to make is that, I've worked in tech since 2006, and I already feel like I've lived 9 lives. I mean, like I've had, like, my jobs have just within the same company have changed so much. What the industry is talking about changes so much. So anything that you can do for your students to kind of just make them enjoy the process of learning and getting in and like figuring out something difficult and not running away from it when it gets hard, like that's what work is. If it's already done and if it's easy, it's already been done. So if you can make them really love that and kind of run towards the problems as opposed to run away from them, I think that prepares them for a STEM career that they're going to thrive in.
Those are all such great comments. I want to thank all of you very much for being here today and sharing your time and your expertise. And I know that everybody got a lot out of it. So a round of applause virtually, I guess, but you can probably only hear me, but thank you so much.
Can we do another plug for Code Crew, please?
Absolutely.
So I'm a co-founder of Code Crew. I know that Mecca spoke with you guys yesterday or the day before. Yesterday, I think, or the day before. Please go to our website, code-crew.org. We have a lot of resources for educators like yourself. We have started doing teacher training. Hopefully some of you have been involved. But, we're very passionate about diversifying our technology industry, and you are the people who can help us do that. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you so much. Well, with that, we will close out the session. And again, I will share the Burning Glass information with all of the participants today. I'll send that out later this afternoon. And we just thank all of you for joining us. And again, thank you again to all of our stellar panelists. Y'all were great.